if no, I think that we can move to the next session. So just 1 second.
Sir,
Sir, yes, sure, sure,
yeah.
sure.
So one request I have that to you actually. So make a
Yeah,
WhatsApp group with this climate forum. For
yeah.
it's a very good way or very good platform to interact each other, knowing each other. So if you make a
We
WhatsApp group with this,
we
yeah.
have also during the presentation of our next speaker, I will share also the link of the WhatsApp group. And also we have the community. At the beginning, yesterday, we presented the different channels in which you can join. I will share again all you. We have also a Facebook community, so you can join us there. We can stay connected to like in several channels in several ways.
Okay, thank you.
So thanks to you. So let's move to the next session. Okay, so I will invite on the floor one. I think that the super like guest regarding climate social forum, because she was one that together with the first group of climate social forum was born the last year. Climate social forum has given a great contribution for like creating and launching this platform, also together with her initiative that's called Rethinking Climate. And the topic of the next session will probably how to rethink the way to communicate climate. We addressed during the first session of the day how to create awareness, how to communicate, how to foster into civil society, for example, the One Health approach and planetary health. And Asia Guerreschi, that is the next speaker, will like showcase to us her initiative. Hi, Asia, welcome to the floor. That's called Rethinking Climate. So I will let to Asia the pleasure to introduce the initiative. And so Asia, the floor is to you.
Thank you very much, Domenico. It is a pleasure to be part of this initiative. I think you're doing an amazing job, and well, it's an honor then for me to present. I have my colleague Francesca with me today. She will share with you at the end. We'll have a little note about our future projects. So just to begin, I'll share my screen because I would like to make this as interactive as possible. So bear with me. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. So first of all, just a brief introduction. Rethinking Climate was an initiative born a year ago. We officially are a charity organization, and our mission is to investigate how we speak about the climate and what's everything around it. But we want to do it in a way that is more interactive. We try to be a network of other organizations like Climate Social Forum, and most of the work Domenico and I also do on the side, volunteering and other research. But we try to do this by engaging through research, through workshops, and we recently concluded a small call with an international initiative. Domenico and I worked on this together as well, for street actions in Milan, in Italy. And that's an example of direct engagement with citizens that we try to do and understand what is it that they even perceive of climate crisis. What does it mean? As Paola Fiore, who opened the Climate Social Forum, said, this definition takes quite a lot of range of different aspects and sides. And so what we try to do is figure out, okay, well, then if we have to talk about it properly, if we have to do it in the best way possible, let's try to figure out what do the people know and understand. So I kindly ask you to go on mentee.com and you can insert this code. I think, Domenico, I shared with you a short link you can share in the chat as well. And it is a way to engage with you directly and know a little bit your thoughts. So let me know when you're there.
Okay, we are there. We can share also the code, I think.
In the, yes, so the code is on the screen. It's 93,
Okay.
yeah, 53-22-8. According to this, we should be 7 at least. Also, I'll wait just 30 seconds more. Don't be shy. Won't ask any weird question, I promise. Okay, there are only a few of you, but this is just a bit of a practice. So for the first questions, I'm testing out this system for the first time, so I apologize. Never mind. Okay, nothing, it doesn't work, so unfortunately. Okay, we'll then go to the substance. I apologize, I'm not much practiced with Menti, but some of the questions were, what is your impression of sustainability? If you can give a short keywords in the chat, that'd be very nice. That lets me know what is it that your idea of it is. And then where do you also get most of the information? Do you get it through websites? Do you get it through newspapers? Do you get it through podcasts? Do you read books the most? And a little bit to understand what is your source of information. How do you mostly understand about what we're talking about today? So every time we talk about the climate narratives, I always like to go 3 steps back, because a lot of what I see it's being done in research is that we miss out a bit what actual communication is. So communication, it appears that you have someone saying something and someone hearing what's being said. And then, of course, that is, you either respond if you can, like the image. So your food smells delicious. Okay, then thanks. But what did you understand from the message? The guy in this image thinks he wants to try a bite. Okay, well, of course, this is just an example, but the whole idea you interpreted a meaning is actually quite important, because then in communication, you have what is called noise, the channel, because in that previous example, you had 2 people face to face, and that's why a one-to-one personal communication generally works best. Just asking simply someone's impression, like, what do you think of the climate? What do you think of, how did you experience it? I think that's quite essential. But then what media studies show is that a channel like a TV, it's actually considered noise. But that is because media as the message is a demonstration that the way you absorb information can also modify or impact the way you then interpret the information per se. Television is an example. You can't shout back at the television. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't advise. The message wouldn't arrive. But of course, what I'm saying is that it's not two-way. You can't really get back feedback. And one example of the editor-in-chief of Weird is saying your brand is not what you say, but what Google says it is. It's because also with websites, the way you communicated, the way message arrived to you has changed. One example is search engine optimization. SEO works a lot on keywords. So if you on your computer are researching a lot of this information, most probably the advertisement also will modify, will change. Websites advice to you will change. The choices on Google will change based on keywords you add as well. But is that really what you're looking for? That not necessarily could be. I mean, Google is really good at giving you what you want, but it could leave out. And the algorithm of social media also shows it. Facebook, if you like certain things, certain pages, most probably Facebook will show you similar pages. And what about other pages you could be interested in? So these are kind of questions that are very useful to keep in mind when you are searching for information, and the way you're also expressing and sharing also when you do it with your own organization, if you have one, or personally, or a company even, doing some maybe good work in sustainability, or even your own story about what climate means to you and about what's being done. There should be some tricks and tips that I will try to share with you afterwards about how to avoid this noise, and also how to make sure that the message goes to those who truly would want to hear it. Then, who is communicating climate narrative? And that, I think it's very important that you understand where you place yourself. So we have now scientists, citizens, and that's because digital helped us achieve that. One example of why we're here and why Climate Social Forum is successful is because thanks to digital innovation, we can able to speak with people throughout the world. And so you have experts also from various fields interacting with each other, but where do you stand? Are you a listener? Are you an expert in this case? Are you a citizen, a student? And how do you approach and understand what other people then tell you, and in your opinion, of course, of what's being said, and then also others? Because what sometimes we forget about communication, and it's frequently among us, people who are truly interested in this argument. What about those who don't? Maybe they just don't receive that kind of information. Maybe they do not care, or just simply they have never interacted in a space like this one. And so they would think, okay, well, why would I care to do that? What's in for me? Do I really have to do it? But because they've never experienced it, and they maybe don't know how it is. The same goes with scientists. Now, new research has shown that scientists have taken a new stand, especially in the more modern era, where scientists now have become communicators. And research shows a bit of a line of either you are the scientist in the lab and that's what you do, you publish papers, period. Or on the other side, completely, you are Bill Nye the Science Guy, like in the States, or we have scientists in Italy too, who are very famous for speaking on television, for instance. Where like in every country, there is that one guy, that one person, one scientist who is best known for sharing information. But what they do and who they are, it's very much important, especially in television, because where money flows, and that's unfortunately something people honestly do not want to talk about, where money flows generally also dictates communication sometimes. So if a scientist, it's backed up by a particular institution, that could partially influence what they say. But of course, science is science, cannot be changed. So that's the good trust in that. But maybe someone who's in television and it's not talking about science, but it's talking about the climate and so on, why would they do it? Who are they talking for? Where is their also personal stand? These are questions that should remind us when we're listening about also where we're getting information. So yeah, Google is sharing links with us and we're looking for information, but exactly who are they? Why are they writing that? And that's why it's also very important to go for reliable information, like IPCC is one example. And so this diagram gives a bit of spaces in which these conversations are happening that could also not be dictated by the money flow. And that's a very good thing. So of course you have politics, but you can leave that aside, but you can see how it connects to the scientists and the civic culture, but how the people are reacting, projects that are being enacted at local level and how people react. And the digital, of course, with the environment, we see a lot of with the increase of interest, in this new topic, we see it also on social media. And every time I see something, I just take a screenshot because it's happening at such a speed that I've seen such a change. I mean, I recall when I had Facebook when I was a teenager and I started volunteering and nobody really talked about it. I felt like I was alone in the world, and then now apparently everybody's talking about it. That's beautiful. But if you're Italian, you can read it to your left. If not, I'll translate it for you. It is he's a journalist, if I'm not mistaken, and he's saying that there is an Iswification of politics, the idea that politics is being expressed by people who are not politicians, for instance. Same goes with climate, who also, again, through social media is expressing so much of what's happening. And the Ellen MacArthur to your right, which is a foundation focused on circular economy. They work a lot with industries, and always makes me wonder that interesting relationship. Maybe there are industries who are not that sustainable, and yet they're taking part in such a conversation. But that's one example of the climate narrative. After all, I mean, you wonder why would they doing this, but now they always want to do that. Now companies are so much interested, and that's also very nice to see, as long as we are being knowledgeable of why we're doing it, what is the information we're sharing with the customers, and how that conversation happening. It's not just, yes, I recycle properly. No, that's not But if you are aware of that conversation happening and coming towards you, then your feedback would be to the company, hey, you need to improve. And so it's very important that there is that feedback, and through social media that can happen. Two examples I always like to share. So Catherine Hayhoe, I highly advise you to follow her. She's a lead science communicator in the States. She's a physicist, and her initial story is that she's married to someone who does not believe in climate change. And why that? But that because it's the way the understanding of climate change happens. So climate change dictated by human actions, yes. However, the way she does is she tries to explain the details of that. Things are worsening because, and again, the term she used, the way she tried to make correctly without making mistakes or sounding too banal, the whole idea of science in climate change. And she also goes to specific communities. She has a community specifically for mothers, so Mothers for Climate, and that's specific because then her communication is also directed to a specific community and with specific tips. So when you speak to your child of climate change, what are some terms you could use? What are some explanation that could facilitate the understanding and the connections also? Cause effect, you do this, this happens. The ocean warms up, this happens. And instead to your left, you have an advertisement that I saw on YouTube, European Commission, and it was consume sustainably, your future, your choice. And it made me laugh quite a bit because I thought, okay, you have what, how many seconds could that ad be? You have 20 seconds, you are pointing, European Commission is pointing the finger to the consumer. That's a form of communication, though I won't express my opinion on it, but it'd be nice to sort of see why that is happening. Like, why would you say your future, your choice, especially considering the European Commission? But that example of something that I don't really agree with, but that's sort of something that's happening, and I feel like we take for granted. We sort of accept that that is happening, but it's not telling us much. It's telling that our future is our choice as a consumer, not really speaking then to, after all, politics and research, which happens within the European Union, but that the fact that we are increasing the amount of content online on these topics, it's important to understand how we perceive this information, how we can critically judge it in a way that it's constructive. So of course, this ad, very beautiful, we thumbs up, yes, continue European Union, but we can do better. So how is it inclusive and how do we speak, which affects how we include and communicate issues regarding climate. So I believe that this tiny chart, however, is the idea that we cannot be perfect in the way we communicate. Climate change, it can take years, and also we should understand how we understand it. So the comfort zone, one example is, I don't understand the climate crisis. Great, that's perfectly fine. Am I scared of it? Okay, well, I share a photo online, but I don't do anything. Shall I learn how to do something? Great, I could educate myself. And then finally, the growing zone of, we are here in the Climate Social Forum, we are contributing our own thoughts. That is a growth zone. I don't know everything about the climate crisis. I don't expect in my lifetime to know everything about it. All I do is I make sure that when I express it to others, I am doing as coherently and as even simple as possible so that I find other people. I make it inclusive. I include people who know more and know less about other things. But the idea is that we should do this all together because nobody can know everything in life, and there's no absolute truth. So science is an absolute truth, but tomorrow we could discover something more. So it still remains the same, but we know more about something. So that's a good part, and that's something we should acknowledge of ourselves that often is ignored, even with articles online. The assumption that news is that thing stays there and it sticks forever. A little bit about how we try to approach all of this big mess of theories is that we have a tiny triangle and we share this with the public, so with you. First of all, we know a definition of a word. That's it. That's in the dictionary. That's great. We can not agree with that definition. That has happened before in the past. But for now, let's start with the idea that a word has a definition. So even sustainability technically has a definition. But how much do we know of that term? How much do we apply of that term? And also the origin of that term. why has it become that? Why has sustainability suddenly become everything that has to do with the climate, which technically is actually not true? And also, where do we come from? So how much of my studies, for instance, has impacted the way I acknowledge some information and the way I understand some information? So I'm turning honest. I'm trying to be as honest as possible in the way I express my own thoughts and the way I share my work with other people as yourself, and of how much I understand of what's happening. And so the final should be a realization that we collectively do about, okay, I'm sharing this information on social media. Am I doing this correctly? Could it be misleading? Could it be saying something else? Is it arriving to the objective of what I'm actually saying? So why are you doing what you do? And how much do you know of what you're actually doing? So this is what we try to do as best as possible. So these are some examples of things that we've tried to do slowly. So we've recently celebrated 1 year, and we started actually with interviews and podcasts. We still have some interviews to come out, and this is because we simply went out and asked questions. I think I've said this before, but there's a lot of the status quo that should be maintained about things that should be said and things that should not be said. I believe in out in the open. Let's talk about it, because it helps the I don't know parts. I don't know this, could you explain it to me? But if we always remain fixed in a certain way that is expected to be spoken about, or etc., then we don't really understand how conflict. So conflict, I think, is very important, and also it helps with how complex the topic is. We collaborate with Vijana think tank, which is an African, Tanzanian think tank. And what they do is they collect for our blog narratives and stories of local people. Generally stories about simply something's happening in my community that is impacted by the climate, for instance. What is the local government, for instance, doing? And that, I believe, it's because I want to move away a little bit about the common stories that we hear. The more you diversify communication, the better also it is. And this goes, I think, for anything in our lives. Italics magazine, instead, it's very focused. It is an English-based newspaper about Italy and what's been happening in Italy for climate-related news. And then Come to Action, you see it goes from a more broader argument to a more local. Come to Action is instead an Italian newspaper organized and led by students of communication. So mostly they talk about climate communication, and it's structured so that you provide some information about what that means to young students. But again, all three altogether are sort of a tiny contribution to really expand the argument in different spheres and see what there is actually happening. So I will give the word to Francesca, my colleague. She will explain our next report that we're working on. Francesca, to you the word.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the words, Asia, and for the introduction, and for all these very useful explanations. I'm a very recent acquisition of Rethinking Climate. I actually met Asia in a very different context, but then we discovered by chance that we were interested in the same things, so I decided to join in. So I am particularly helping with this project that Rethinking Climate is doing, and it is a report that we're building from a series of interviews that took place in April, sorry, and it is part of the Italian Ministry for the Environment's initiative, All for Climate, that was taking place and is taking place throughout 2021 in view of the upcoming COP26, so the Conference of Parties. We interviewed activists, scientists, and environmental communicators from all throughout Italy and beyond. And we talked about different topics from circular economy to social media to youth activism and other very pressing topics. We did this to analyze what are the opportunities and what are the issues behind environmental communication today. And you can see these interviews in our YouTube channel, as Asia showed you before. But again, we're trying to make this information more digestible and even more available to the public through a report that will make it more effective, and maybe add a few figures to accompany the themes that have been dealt with. So we're trying to connect people with climate and with science and with data, putting at the center of our communication society and people's mindsets. Mindsets that perhaps need a shift that does not go through guilt nor through imposition. And this will be the center of our communication and the center of the report. So we'll try to build a toolkit and kind of a sum up of the threats and opportunities in order to make communication better, and to make it more inclusive, as inclusive as possible and never divisive. And as Asia said earlier, we're trying to include more people. We're trying to include those others and not keep these messages inside our bubble. So even if sustainability seems like an easy topic to communicate, these interviews were really useful to dig deeper into what is wrong and what is right, what are the different topics that are perhaps more divisive, and where there's maybe controversies, and how to respond to those and how to communicate that to the public. So we'll hopefully have a map for future guidance that helps communicators, but can also, and first and foremost, help the public to understand climate. Maybe insert a vocabulary and something that will truly make people more aware and more participative of the climate crisis and climate communication in general. So some of the takeaways, and then I'll leave the floor back to Asia, are, for example, the importance of communication in the way it affects our perceptions in relation to nature even, and the way we think and the way we consume, so our mindsets again. But also, as we saw, for example, in Milan, with the involvement of Fridays for Future, but also other young activists like Extinction Rebellion and the Youth COP and all the preliminary meetings of the COP26, the importance of youth involvement, especially seeing the high empathy of young people towards the climate crisis, because they're very, very much exposed to the effects of the climate crisis through social media especially, but also the very high degree of freedom of young people. So we'll share with you the report once it's done. And again, thank you for listening, and I'll give you the floor, Asia.
Thank you. So yes, we're very excited to complete this. It's been quite some time. But so yes, first of all, we're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for authors on our blog or in our interviews. So if you want to collaborate, please feel free to check us out. We're on all social media and on our website. So Domenico, back to you, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks to you, Asia, thanks to Francesca. So congratulations, first of all. So we started almost together with the Climate Social Forum, and you did such a great progress. So congratulations for you all. I don't know if there are questions for our speakers from the floor. Also, curiosity, I think that a lot of things that's catching my mind. I very like the target map that you showed regarding the different zones for knowing and talking about climate change. I think it's super useful also to understand how to communicate better and so on. So I don't know if you want to say a few words about that graph. That was super.
Yes, I actually was researching on my own, and I found it, and I thought that's perfect example and explanation of what I'm trying to express. After all, I mean, this initiative was born out of the idea that online, most of what I was reading either was a repetition or you were fixed in saying the same things because it was easier, but nobody really thought, how do I feel about this? You know, we talk about climate anxiety, we talk about not being able to grasp or repeat, or we just repeat what scientists say, but it's like, do we even have a concept overall of what's happening? It's really far away from us, or it's looking too further. So with that graph, it's more personal. It's more about how you feel. Like, are you still growing? Well, first of all, we never stop learning and studying. So that's something I like to repeat quite frequently. And I was told, and I will share it again, it's a learning process every day. But do we fear what's happening? Does it make us anxious? Do we even know, however? Like, the first step is, do we know what we're talking about? And it's very important to just ask yourself questions, and it will help you find that space within that graph in understanding how you feel about it and how that impacts and how you're sharing that information.
Thanks. I don't know if someone of the friends wants to ask something. I think take the chance, because several things are not so trivial that you presented. I'm very lucky that is like a concrete analysis of also the state of communication on climate change. That's very useful for, we talked today about spreading awareness, dissemination, like doing engagement in a participatory way, but all these things starts from such kind of analysis that help to do better what we are doing now. So I think that's very interesting.
Because we think it's assumed, like how we learn to communicate is not just talking, it's what we know of words. When we put words together, we just assume that it's, then we have someone telling us public speaking is actually completely different. Like, okay, well then what have I been doing so far? And that's the whole process of, how do we speak of climate? Do we know the terms we're using? Climate change. What is that?
And do people know the terms we're using? Otherwise, if nobody understands.
Yeah.
Also who we're talking to. So it's very important to know our audience.
So we learned that communication is like a complicated matter. No, sorry.
It's very undervalued. So one thing I always joke is that communicators are ditched on the side. Like, you guys don't do anything. It's what degree is that? Like, well, technically we're supporting you in this, but okay, we'll stay in the corner a little bit, like on the side, like, hey, hi, here's some info on how you can speak better. So, but yeah, but it's one thing communicators say all the time, like a company trying to do better in their sustainability report, and then they get a scientist to write it. That's great. The science should stay there with data. But sometimes having a communicator that refreshes a little bit what's the way it's being told exactly the same thing can make a difference.
Thank you very much, Asia, and thank you again, Francesca. So now I think that we can move to the next session. First of all, we take like a little bit break because some speakers are still joining. So I saw that someone had joined, but before launching the last session, let's take like a 5 minutes break, and then we can go to the next session. Thank you very much again to Asia and Francesca of Rethinking Climate. You can share, Asia, also the links of your channels into the chat and also in our Discord channel. I don't know if you already joined, but this year we decided to like make an open agora, more open than the last year, we can say, with the Discord channel. Discord is super fantastic platform that allows you to interact, start call with users, so you can engage there also.
Thank you,
Okay,
Domenico.
let's take a small break before going to the last session, and see you in 5 minutes.